Hi, welcome back to the channel, or welcome to the channel for the first time. Today I want to do a video about proverbs, some French proverbs specifically, and often I want to give you the English equivalent to them. I've collected a short list of only a dozen proverbs in French. Well, we do have nearly identical or similar expressions in English. And so I've also collected just a couple proverbs, I think four exactly, that I find particularly French. And so I guess to clarify, what is my working definition for proverb? I'm going to start by saying a proverb is one kind of idiomatic expression, and what and so that's why first I want to talk a little bit about what are idioms. And so you have idioms, and proverbs are both sayings or expressions in language, and proverbs is one kind of idiom. And so what's an idiom? First of all, an idiomatic expression, an idiom, is something where all the individual words, the meanings of the individual words in the expression, in the saying, don't add up to the meaning of the whole saying when put all together. Often these idioms it's because we're using language metaphorically. So for instance, we might say to kick the bucket instead of to die or to be deceased. And so kicking the bucket gives a different literal image than uh, being deceased. And so you don't translate this literal. The whole not literal meaning of these idioms is why they're, in a literal sense, untranslatable. Give you, for example, one idiom in English is "it's raining cats and dogs." And this cartoon here from a 19th century English cartoonist expressing the meaning of "it's raining cats and dogs," well, illustrating the meaning of "it's raining cats and dogs," and "it's raining pitchforks," which was also an expression at the time. And why did "it's raining cats and dogs" stick around a lot longer than "it's raining pitchforks"? My best guess is because "it's raining cats and dogs" brings up an idiom that's existed since centuries before "raining cats and dogs." When we talk about people are fighting like cats and dogs, there's all this already metaphorical imagery of violence associated with cats and dogs. So that's my best guess as to why "it's raining cats and dogs" stuck around a lot better, because it expresses the violent nature of a real downpour. And also, this illustration here is a good example of why you shouldn't try to translate idioms literally, because you might give somebody the impression that there are felines and canines and pitchforks coming down from the sky if you're saying "it's raining cats and dogs," or "it's raining pitchforks." So let's not. And so that brings me to a lot of idioms. We have ones that are meant to mean the same thing, well, to bear a similar meaning, but are worded very differently. So the image is very different in two different languages. For example, if I'm trying to tell somebody that as an adjunct faculty who teaches French, I do not earn much money. I earn very little money. the imagery is different according to the idiom. In English, I work for peanuts. But in France, I work for plums. Je travaille pour des prunes. So different imagery, and the point is the same, is that what would be better is if I were earning a decent wage and not being, yeah, paid like an animal. Anyway, so that brings me to, um, well, these are idioms and all that, and so that brings me to what kind of idiomatic expression is a proverb per se. It's also known as an adage or an aphorism or a maxim. So it's a little short saying that really teaches a lesson. It teaches you a little nugget of cultural wisdom, a little useful thought. And so a lot of these proverbs are of ancient or unknown origin. They go back a very long time. And they teach us a lesson, maybe how should humans behave a little better sometimes. For example, we have one proverb widely known in English, the early bird gets the worm. So this is all, of course, about be on time, uh, and yeah, don't be late because you will miss out. And there's a similar proverb in English, another one, which is a stitch in time saves nine, which teaches a similar lesson about being punctual and all this, but more from a vantage point of preparation. Prepare ahead of time and things will go smoothly when you're doing it and you'll achieve your desired outcome. So neither of these proverbs should be taken literally because we're not actually talking about birds or worms here, and we're also not talking about literally stitching time. Um, you're talking about punctuality and preparation. So now moving on to the dozen proverbs that are French proverbs with very similar ones in English. Start with Rome ne s'est pas fait en un jour, which the English equivalent is Rome wasn't built in a day. And I mean, the literal meaning is Rome wasn't made in a day. But so in English, we have Rome wasn't built in a day. And why are the two proverbs so similar? Because the English one comes from a translation many centuries ago of the original medieval French version of this French proverb, which is a little more verbose than the current French proverb or the English proverb, but means about the same thing. And it was from a collection of proverbs published around 1190. And so the second proverb is also nearly identical in English and French and also concerns Rome. Oh, right. Before moving on to the second proverb, what's the meaning of the first one? Rome wasn't built in a day. On ne s'est pas fait en un jour. It takes a lot of work and things don't come super easy. Things take time to build something big. Time, energy, all of this has to go into if you want to construct something amazing as Rome. And now, speaking of how amazing ancient Rome was, especially to the Roman Empire, the second proverb that I have, which also very similar in French and English and also about Rome, is in French we say tout chemin mène à Rome. In English, all paths lead to Rome. These two proverbs pretty much directly, literally translate to each other, which is unlike Proverbs, but again, English and French have had a lot of history and a lot of borrowing back and forth over the many centuries. And so in English, we also say all paths lead to Rome. And the idea that this proverb that's so very similar in both languages still exists today. It really says something big to the important place of the Roman Empire that still exists in European consciousness, or at least the consciousness of the Western world, because after all, none of the Romance languages, for example, would exist without the Roman Empire having been a thing a couple thousand years ago. So, my third proverb in the list of French proverbs is Qui vivra verra, which literally means who will live will see. And so in English, we might say time will tell or the future will tell. And so this sort of means we can't predict the future. We gotta wait and see how it goes. And this is why in English we sort of co-opted an expression from Spanish, Spanish saying through a song from the 1950s, 1956, I think it was, Que sera, sera, which literally means what will be. So that it translated literally into English. And I do believe those were also part of the lyrics of the song. And but yeah, and it's all about we can't see the future, so we gotta wait, and then it will be evident. And we can't change the future either. From that matter, is just this adverb? I mean, this adage is just telling us to wait and see because the future is what it is. Now, another expression where we have quite different adages in English and French, but both convey about the same meaning. On ne change pas une équipe qui gagne. You don't change a team that's winning. Um, like, and so one does not change a winning team. That sort of means exact same thing as we say in English. If we say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Um, which means if something is working fine, there's no reason to make any changes because why would you? That's insane. And the next proverb, the fifth proverb in the dozen French proverbs I wanted to point out is simply qui veut voyager loin, ménage sa monture, which literally means he who wants to travel a long way will take it slow and steady. And the take it slow and steady part, that's ménage sa monture. And the reason why I have some people on horseback here is because ménager sa monture, the expression in French meaning to go take it slow and steady, is une monture is a mount. And so related to horseback riding. Now in English, we have a similar proverb, slow and steady wins the race, which to me that evokes the fable of the tortoise and the hare, which is why the other image there. Um, and so take it slow, that will take you very far and you will succeed. Now, the sixth proverb in France, I love this one. It evokes little birds and all the work it takes to make their little nest and all that. Petit à petit, l'oiseau fait son nid, which literally means little by little, the bird makes its nest. And so this also evokes the proverb in English, slow and steady wins the race, except it's not really about traveling distance or about speed or anything. It's about every little bit helps. So consistency and persistence. It's about persistence and consistent work towards a goal. And this is kind of similar to the adage Rome wasn't built in a day, right? where it takes time and energy and work to do things, but most of all, that's why I included every little bit helps, every little bit counts, because it really evokes um, that idea that every little effort you make towards a goal, that's good, that's progress, always will help you achieve your dream, which, of course, in the case of the birds here, is a place to lay their eggs, raise their babies, and all of these. And so the seventh proverb also expresses a similar thing about, in English, we say, don't judge a book by its cover. In French, we say, l'habit ne fait pas le moine, which means the habit doesn't make the monk. So this is about you should judge someone based on their actions and not on their appearance or on the outside. And that's similar to what comes to mind when we say don't judge a book by its cover. Now, the next proverb in French and in English both talks about how upsetting, how depressing, how, what a downer it is when it's raining out and when it's storming out and all this. And also something about how humans crave the sun. In French, we say après la pluie, le beau temps, which literally means after rain, good weather. And in English, we say every cloud has a silver lining, which means even though, things might stink right now, or they might seem like they stink right now, they will get better because it always does. And another proverb, which is pretty much in English and French, very literal translations of each other. In English, we say better late than never. In French, mieux vaut tard que jamais. And so this is all about even if you're late with something, better get it done, because not getting it done at all will possibly be much worse, will probably be much worse. Although I'm not a huge fan of this adage, because in my jaded opinion, there are some deadlines we're missing it. That is it. You missed it. And so there is no doing it late. But anyway, that's just me in my jaded opinion. And maybe, yeah, anyway. So it's not just about my thoughts, it's about cultural wisdom, which is true. If something's never done at all, that's almost always worse than just doing it a little late. Oh, another expression that same in French and English, and really disgusting if you do the visual imagery of it. Again, we're not supposed to translate these literally. Les murs ont des oreilles. The walls have ears. This little adage is all about um, once you say something out loud, then it's really out there, right? Be careful what you say, because if you say something, then it's out there, others will know, and all of this. And so it also serves as a warning about rumor mills and all this, gossip mills and all this. But yeah, and most of all, the imagery I find kind of revolting. Walls having ears, kind of like the imagery of the expression in English. If we say, "Oh, I'm ready to listen to you," we might say, "I'm all ears." That is so gross. That's a visual image that I shouldn't have said that, because if you try to picture it in your head, now you can't unimagine it. So sorry about that. But again, yuck. And so We have an expression in English, to each his own, like everybody does their own thing, and same as it takes all kinds to make a world, but to each his own, everybody's off doing their own thing, then that's really how it should be. In France, we say les chiens aboient, la caravane passe. Sorry, les chiens aboient, la caravane passe. And so, les chiens aboient, the dogs are barking, or the dogs bark. La caravane passe, the caravan or the procession goes by, it goes on. And so, yeah, the dogs are off doing their own thing, and the caravan, which in one day were, wagons, horseback drawn wagons, and all things, and these days, tractor trailer trucks, caravans, all this, and traffic, and they're all up to their own thing. And that's okay because that will is going to make the world move forward and everybody can be happy in the process. And finally, the last of the dozen French proverbs I have with very similar meanings in English is vouloir c'est pouvoir, which literally means to want is to be able. And so this brings to mind, for me, the English proverb, where there's a will, there's a way, which pretty much goes to show you that, well, it tries to teach you that if you want something bad enough, then you can always make it happen. In other words, nothing is impossible if you really believe. And so that's a good transition there to the first of my four proverbs that I find to be incredibly French, because it brings up the idea of nothing is impossible. And so there's no such thing as impossible as an adage we have in English. In French, we say impossible n'est pas français, which means impossible isn't French. I love it how the French have taken this proverb, this adage, and really made it their own. Like, imagine, it reminds us of how much that the French have accomplished, which is why I included the Arc de Triomphe as well as the Eiffel Tower, because those are pretty impressive accomplishments from France. Now, the second one that I find to be incredibly very French because the French made it their own is Paris ne s'est pas fait en un jour. A lot of people do the liaison on that T, Paris ne s'est pas fait en un jour. And that I think is an homage of sorts, a reference to the first proverb that we talked about today. Rome wasn't built in a day. Rome ne s'est pas fait en un jour, which was spelled a little differently and all that because it was based on a much older proverb from medieval French. And this goes to show, for one, in the French consciousness, the importance of Paris and Paris's place as a cultural beacon of light and culture and logic and reason, um, which is very much, culturally and intellectually speaking, this is very much a Mecca or a Rome. Anyway, so very, very French again because Paris instead of Rome, the French really made that adage their own by putting this one out. Now, the last two I have are both culinary. Well, they both have to do with food and beverage. So the third proverb that I found to be incredibly French, I found it to be that way because it's all about drinking wine. And we all know how the French love their wine, and France produces some of the best wine in the world, in my opinion, anyway. And in French, we say, quand le vin est tiré, il faut le boire. And tiré is is a reference to the cork being pulled. So once you've uncorked your wine, you gotta drink it. That's how your wine bottle anyway, you gotta drink it. And that's a way in a proverb in French that basically says once you take the first step, there's no going back. But I love it, love it, love it because it's very, very French because it's all about wine. And another thing that evokes French culture, French culinary culture anyway, as much as wine, in my opinion, French bread. Um, and so I think this proverb is incredibly French because of a culture that's so proud of its baking. And my lord, again, in my humble opinion, France has the best bread in the world. And so the expression goes, de mauvais grain, jamais bon pain, which literally means from bad grain, never good bread. So this proverb, the meaning is that the quality of something depends on its origin. And so, yeah, you can't make something good from that bad ingredients. And so again, I found that one to be incredibly French. And just looking at all that delicious bread is making me hungry. So thank you everybody for watching about all of these proverbs that are expressed in French and in English. And I would like to, yeah, thank everybody as always. Thank you so much for watching to the very end. I very much appreciate this. If you can think of any proverbs that should be shared with the public, please put them in the comment section. That would be amazing. And please do like the video. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please do. So thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you next time.